It's election night 2021. The breakdown starts now. Good evening and welcome to the special election edition of The Breakdown. I am Tara Setmayer and the Rick Wilson is back. We're glad to see you, Rick.
Happy to be back after my daughter's wedding last week.
Yes, congratulations.
I was off last week for to go up to my daughter's wedding, and it was a delight. And she's now safely married and off into her honeymoon. So back with LPTV tonight. Although I am traveling, I'm happy to join everybody. And not the best night in Virginia.
No, we appreciate you having you back. And again, congrats to your daughter. But there are no congrats in order tonight for the Democrats in Virginia.
No.
Because they blew it. It hasn't been officially called by AP yet, I don't think. But, most of the election prognosticators who crunch the numbers and who do this kind of stuff, they called it for Youngkin about 45 minutes ago. And, I had this sinking feeling. I live here in Virginia, and I've been watching this race very closely. We've been covering this on LPTV for the last several weeks. And I had this sinking feeling that the Democrats were not going to be able to pull this out based on what I saw in the lack of enthusiasm here in Northern Virginia, the fact that the school issue, the critical race theory issue was really taking off. After Terry McAuliffe made that gaffe in the debate, they did not punch back hard enough. They didn't go on the counteroffensive hard enough. And also, I think that they did not define Donald Trump, Glenn Youngkin, as Donald Trump's acolyte
Good Freudian
early
slip.
enough. Yes, no kidding,
I think
right?
Look,
we
were being told after the primary was over that it was a 20-point race, a 15-point race. We came in very late in September because we started seeing the numbers slip.
Right.
And, but for 2 months, Glenn Youngkin had an open field. He had clean air to run in. And so it was much harder to buy up the negatives, especially because Youngkin is largely a self-funder.
That's right. He's worth $450 million, folks, just so that you know. Look, folks, a real man of the people.
Look, folks, the level of investment in this race on both sides was quite a lot. It was quite significant. And it is important to remember a cardinal Wilson rule. Culture wars are where Democrats go to die. Do not fight culture wars. Push back on them. I think the ad we did in Virginia that, we didn't have the resources in Virginia to push it out as much as we wanted to, but basically identify what critical race theory really was. And it's important, I think, to push forward on that idea because this will be an area where the Republicans run critical race theory, even though it's made up horseshit in 2022 nationally. They will take what works and replicate it, and they will move quickly to do so because that's the system that you and I both emerged from. So not a great night in Virginia. I think it is also a cautionary note to Democrats that if you have majorities, govern smartly. If you have majorities, do things that are appealing to the people in those suburbs that define so much of Virginia's active voter pool of the big 6 counties in Northern Virginia, because these legislative races, we had nothing. We didn't touch any of the legislative stuff or
the down ballot races. Yeah, the down ballot races.
This is something that obviously got into the system, and look, suburban voters are by definition, they're not woke. They're not. Neither, by the way, are they raging right-wing Trumpers. There were a lot of Republicans looking for a reason to go home.
That's correct.
And Glenn Youngkin gave them a reason to go home.
Let me say something about that too, Rick, really quickly. Go ahead. One of the other cardinal rules of campaigning is you never let the opponent define themselves before you do. Right. And, Terry McAuliffe completely underestimated Glenn Youngkin's strategy of being Trump-light, Trump in a vest. And you're right. Youngkin began his onslaught of introducing himself to Virginia way before Terry McAuliffe ever went up on the airwaves here. Mm-hmm. And the way he presented himself was as a Mitt Romney moderate Republican that gave a permission structure for those Republicans who voted for Biden last year because they hated Trump so much and recognized what a threat he was. He gave those people the permission to go back home. And once they started to look at him that way, McAuliffe should have immediately, well, he should have done it before Youngkin. They should have immediately gone after it. The problem is, and I tweeted this earlier tonight, going into 2022, Republicans do not give a fuck about your feelings. They don't give a fuck about facts or the truth. You cannot come to a political warfare, guerrilla political warfare fight with a policy pen. And that's exactly what Democrats did here in Virginia. And I worry that they are not going to learn the right lessons from this loss here in Virginia, because it was a slaughter.
Sure.
And it should not have been, but they underestimated a lot of these things. And because they're already out there on cable news thinking that they need to go more woke. No, you don't. They're already out there trying to say that, well, McAuliffe was trying to tie him to Youngkin to Trump, and it didn't really work. People didn't care. That's not true. Okay, he did it too late. It was already it was too late. It wasn't convincing to people anymore. The school
and Youngkin probably spent $20 million.
Oh yes,
trying to break himself off from the kind of attacks
because
that were defining him.
That's
as a small,
That's correct.
A skinnier version of Trump.
And because he was self-funded, he didn't need to worry about Trump funding and fundraising for him, so he could keep him at arm's length. And that's I just want to give one more example, then I'll pass it back over to you. One of my best friends, he moderate Republican, him and his wife voted Hillary, voted Biden. He voted Youngkin. She voted McAuliffe this time around. She said that she was leaning Youngkin until she got a text from the Youngkin folks that said, Donald Trump wants you to support Glenn Youngkin for the MAGA agenda in Virginia. She got a text for that. And she said, you know what? I'm not doing this. Obviously, these people didn't learn their lesson. And that turned her as a suburban millennial mother. If that tells me that messaging would have worked if the McAuliffe campaign had done it earlier.
Look, there's also a certain degree to which we used to say in politics, name ID and voter knowledge of a candidate is a great thing. I don't know if we're in that era anymore. And McAuliffe, was his numbers as governor were okay. They weren't like stellar, but there may be a little bit of too much road weariness about Terry in some ways. I will say one other thing, and I want to refocus on the bigger picture of 2022. This will almost inevitably lead to and we'll see what the legislative numbers look like. This will almost inevitably lead to pressure on Youngkin from the MAGA side, from the far right side,
absolutely,
to do all the things that he promised.
That's right.
And Virginia is a state that is going to have a very interesting couple of years here. We'll see what the numbers are in the legislature, because he's going to be pushed to do voting rights restrictions. He's going to be pushed to do the Virginia version of SB 8
and abortion restrictions.
And a whole variety of other things. It's going to be a fascinating thing. But again, I do think Youngkin, it should not be underestimated that being a self-funder is a major factor in this kind of election.
And it should also not be underestimated that he didn't really have a primary. And because the Virginia convention, the way that they nominate the candidates here is kind of funky, but he didn't have a long drawn out primary with a more Trumpy type of candidate. So the crazy of Trump and the MAGA world that exists here in Virginia was not on full display for a long time. I mean, you have people here who are January 6th sympathizers, people who think that Joe Biden's not the legitimate president. That whole cacophony of kookery is coming to Virginia. This woman, Winsome Sears, who's about to be the lieutenant governor, is a lunatic, completely unqualified for the job, okay? And Jason Miyares, the attorney general candidate who's looking like he's going to win too, another one that is sympathetic to the Trumpier side of things. The Democrats, the Republicans only need 6 seats, I believe, to turn the legislature. 6, that's it. And they're probably going to get it because of the collapse in the rural districts in Virginia of Democratic support. This has got to be a wake-up call. I was trying to push with my Democratic friends. They needed to say, Terry McAuliffe needed to say that if you elect Glenn Youngkin, you might think he's okay. You know, he's just in his vest and he's a nice guy and he's like the guy we see at the Rotary Club, meeting. He said that when you elect him, you're electing a whole new breed of Republican is coming with him. It's not just him.
He's not wrong.
He's bringing a crop with him. That's right. He's not wrong. And they didn't focus on the lunatics that he is about to bring with him into governing in Virginia. This is I'm not happy as a resident of the state, but I'm more concerned looking forward to 2022. What lessons the Democrats learn from this? And if I'm a swing district Democrat running for re-election next year in a midterm, I'm nervous.
I'm getting my ass to the right is what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and I want to go back to 2018, 2022. There is a model the Democrats pursued in 2020 or 2018 where they had 41 races they were victorious in 2018. Now, they like to say, oh, it was all about healthcare.
No,
it was about a bunch of people who fit their districts, who were more moderate, who were more center-left, who were not squad, who were not progressive, hyper, far left. And they defused the Republican accusation of, oh, you're all a bunch of socialists. That is something I think we really got to look into in terms of candidate selection and recruitment.
Absolutely.
In 22. But I also want to say this. Trump will interpret this and the Republicans will interpret this. Prepare for a lot of triumphalism in the next 24 hours. Be prepared.
It's going to be a lot of victory laps.
A lot of victory laps. Anyway, you know what? I've been doing politics for 30 plus years now. And you have great election nights, you have bad election nights. This is a bad election night in Virginia, and the pro-democracy coalition was not triumphant there. But you get up the next day, you move on, you press forward because the fight continues, and it has to continue. I will say this: the people who had the worst day today were the QAnoners in Dallas because JFK Jr. apparently never showed up. I mean, it's a tragedy, but who could have seen that one coming? Can I just say something about that too? I was talking to my mom earlier today, and because she lives in New Jersey, and it looks like New Jersey is going to be all right. I haven't seen the numbers since we've been on air about 45 minutes. It's just a matter of how much Murphy wins by. But I was talking to my mom, and she was unfamiliar with the Twitter account Right Wing. I think it's Right Wing Watch. Right Wing Watch, yeah. Yeah, and she was horrified when she started scrolling through the tweet timeline of the absolute insanity of these QAnon people and these evangelicals on the other side and what they are actually. I think we're going to dedicate a show coming up after the election stuff settles down. We really need to point this out because these people, back to your point about down ballot races, these people are running for elections where they will have power over the administration of the elections. Yes. This is a scary thought. These are people don't pay attention a lot of times to the down ballot races of Secretary of State, Attorney General, who your local board of elections supervisor is, depending on where you live. They're a school board now. This is the Republican playbook, and they are the people are getting Trumpier and Trumpier and Trumpier. So, I mean, we're going to have to really, really hammer this home because down ballot races they're always important, but they've never been more important now because that's how they snatch freedom away from you one election at a time. And next thing you know, you turn around and go, how the hell did we get here? How did we end up with abortion illegal in, after 6 weeks in Texas? How did we end up with voting rights being restricted, taking us back to the 60s in places like Georgia? I mean, this is heed our warning, folks. Heed our warning. It is. Look, like I said, there are lessons to be gained here. And Stuart Stevens says, and he and I have both been to this rodeo a lot of times. People will obviously overinterpret on both sides of the equation what happened. They will obviously over torque the bolts on their individual machines after this is over. But this is also a critical lesson. You've got to run these races properly. You've got to define your opponent early. And look, if Terry had been out from day one hammering Glenn Youngkin as a Trump clone, it would have made it harder for a 15% swing of Republican women in Northern Virginia.
Correct.
Don't take any voter group for granted. The Democrats do this a lot. Why do we lose Hispanics in Dade County and in the Rio Grande Valley? Because they're not like everybody else.
That's right.
Why do we lose Republican women who we thought were moving towards us? Because they're not like they're not. Once you win them once, you're not married. You're just dating. So
that's right. That's like a good point, actually, because you have to keep winning them over every 2 years or every 4 years for president. What's your biggest takeaway from what you've seen so far tonight? Because even right now in New Jersey, it's like 49.7 to 49.5. Only 30% in, though. There's a lot to
yeah,
go in New Jersey,
I haven't paid much attention to the Jersey race, honestly.
just overall. I just brought that up
Yeah.
because our producer put it up.
Look, voter enthusiasm matters, and down ballot races matter. I don't know what the Jersey spread's going to look like in the end. I still think Murphy's going to comfortably hold that seat.
Double digits? You think he wins it by 10 plus?
Probably still. High
Biden
singles,
won by
probably.
16.
Yeah, high singles. But again, look, and I just had a message from a very, an interestingly prominent Republican in Northern Virginia who just said to me, Glenn Youngkin doesn't owe this race to Donald Trump. Glenn Youngkin owes this race to Joe Manchin. You can't underestimate the amount of anxiety in government workers, many of whom are Republicans, about how bad things have been in the process of passing the budget and Build Back Better and the infrastructure bill. A lot of contractors, consultants, etc., were counting on this being done by now, and they're pissed off. So I'll take that as a relevant aspect of this, and that's a person who a name Northern Virginia Republican you would know. So interesting.
So I have a thought about that. I think that and our good friend Michael Steele mentioned this earlier today on MSNBC, and he was in agreement that not having the infrastructure bill passed, at least to point to as a win to show that Democrats can govern, definitely was a drag on McAuliffe. And I think it was because but do I think that was the defining issue?
No, I don't think it was decisive, but I think it softened the numbers in Loudoun.
Correct. And definitely that, and also hurt enthusiasm. I think that was probably most impactful when it came to enthusiasm, because people were throwing their hands up going, we're watching Democrats in a circular firing squad right now. Right. They were depressed by that vote, that the vote was depressed because of that. What animated people in Loudoun County, and we cannot emphasize this enough. I told you I live here. I live in this area. Right. Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William was the critical race theory issue and violence in schools and the trans issues in schools. It was a very localized issue. But the CRT thing is example one. This is a masterclass in the impact and effectiveness of propaganda. Of a culture war propaganda campaign, because CRT is a made up thing in Virginia. They do not teach it here. They don't teach it really anywhere.
It's a made up thing everywhere.
Correct. It's a law school
but it is a
thing.
Lesson.
Yeah.
Guys, I think I'm going to publish this. I'm going to publish the chapter in my second book called Culture War Wars are where Democrats go to die.
Yep.
Do not fight them. You have to get out of them. You have to fight something else. Anyway, Tara, I've got to hop.
That's right.
I got to get back to this event, but I thank you guys. And
thank you, Rick Wilson.
Keep the faith, everybody. Much work ahead, and have a great night.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, there's a lot to digest tonight, but that's okay. The world will not end. It just means you have to recalibrate, and that's what we will continue to do. Before we go tonight, I wanted to point out two other things that are going on besides the elections, because yes, there are lots of elections going on tonight. Virginia, New Jersey. You also have out there in Minneapolis with the vote on whether to dismantle the police department. Keeping an eye on that. I think that would be a huge mistake. Another boon to Republicans for the whole defund the police nonsense that almost cost Democrats last year. Speaking of being too woke, I've said this before, that progressives do not win swing districts. Progressives have their own lane, and they are safe seats in their districts. They do not win swing districts. So I hope Democrats rethink their approach to going into 2022 next year. One other thing we have last week in the Republican Party, and I want to run that for you guys tonight because it is a reminder of what we are up against going into 2022. This is where it's only the beginning. Take a look.
When do we get to use the guns? No, and I'm not, that's not a joke. I'm not saying it like that. I mean, literally, how many elections are they going to steal before we kill these people?
We have metal detectors outside of the House chambers because of me.
Today, I am calling for the creation of a formal commission to investigate the true origin of COVID-19, the role Fauci played in its creation, the false statements he made to members of Congress under oath, and why the hell Americans are funding the torture of puppies in Africa. Americans deserve the truth, and this demon doctor must never be allowed to escape justice.
Dr. Fauci would be right in there in the same room with people like Dr. Mengele and Dr. Zell, who worked for the Nazis.
My God, a parent did a Nazi salute at a school board because he thought the policies were oppressive.
God himself gave Donald Trump the strength and the courage and the wisdom to pardon me. On the morning I was arrested, at 6:06 in the morning, the night before I'd fallen asleep reading the Bible.
I'm constantly appalled and disgusted at how unqualified people are in Congress.
Well, just remember the key facts. The dossier was the Clinton campaign paying Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion, who hired Christopher Steele to create this fake dossier.
Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country, she doesn't have a single child. If she wants to brainwash and destroy the minds of children, she should have some of her own and leave ours the hell alone.
Critical race theory is nothing more than state-sponsored racism.
There are a lot of communists that sit in our elected government currently.
I see Democrats who are envious of the Chinese Communist Party every day.
We need to get rid of this January 6th commission and replace it with a November 3rd commission.
And honestly, we have businesses that have been locked down and lives destroyed for over a year based to say no COVID vaccine passports
made in China.
Melania Trump is all of us. Can I just say something about Roger Stone? Is this guy freaking kidding me? Talking about that God told Donald Trump to pardon him, and the night before before he fell asleep reading the Bible, what, the Bible of how to be a disgusting swinger? Give me a break. Roger Stone is a despicable, disgusting sexual deviant, okay? Who probably I wouldn't want to be anywhere near him if he walked past a church, okay? The Bible will probably disintegrate in his hands if he picked it up. Are you fucking kidding me, Roger Stone? This is what people are actually listening to these people. We cannot just dismiss this as kookery, like I said before. We can't dismiss it because this is out there. This is the mainstream Republican Party mantra. These are the voices of the Republican Party and of the right-wing media. We can't. We have to stay vigilant, folks. We have to stay vigilant. And on that note, that concludes our special election night coverage. I'll be back on Thursday. We'll talk a little bit more. We're going to talk on Thursday also about this bombshell, unbelievable report coming out of the Washington Post concerning January 6th. They break down the before, the during, and the after with some new reporting we didn't know about yet. And it's incredible. So I'm definitely going to talk more about that. And I want to give a shout out to one of our producers, Sam, who wasn't with us today because he was out volunteering at the polls in New York. Sam, you're a great American, and I encourage other people to please sign up and get involved in your local elections next year for the midterms. We have to have the good people out there keeping a watchful eye on our most precious democratic institution. So that is my word of encouragement for tonight. It's not over. There's more of us than there are of them. I wholeheartedly believe it, but we have to pay attention and stay involved. Thank you guys, and we will see you on Thursday. And we're speaking tomorrow night at 7:00. Don't forget to watch it. We're back at our normal time on Thursday.
Hi, I'm Ryan Wiggins at the Lincoln Project, and there's a lot going on we need to talk about. Trump's been hinting at a 2024 presidential run using the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen from him, and it's working. New polls show fewer Republicans are willing to hold the January 6th rioters criminally responsible. Meanwhile, GOP-controlled states are leading voter suppression campaigns nationwide. The Lincoln Project is working to neuter the current GOP-controlled government to ensure that future elections are fair and democratic, and to put power back in the hands of the people where it belongs. but we can't do it without you. Go to lincolnproject.us/donate to join in our long-term fight for democracy. We're honored to have you with us, and we're not letting up.